Welcome to the Over 40 Alpha Podcast with your host, Funk Roberts.
We are live, and welcome to the Over 40 Alpha Podcast. This is episode number 131, and I'm your host, Funk Roberts, former professional athlete turned online fitness expert and fitness expert for men in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. And this podcast is dedicated to helping men who struggle with workouts, who struggle with nutrition, with recovery, with low testosterone, and with just gathering the information to help us live longer, live healthier, and be happy as we age. And today I'm excited to have Chris Burres on the podcast. I'm part of a Uncovering the Secrets of Longevity, Live Beyond the Norm Summit that starts February the 26th and ends on March the 3rd, 2004. And this longevity summit is a beast. There's speakers like Dr. Stephen Gundry and Dave Asprey and Ben Greenfield and Sergey Young and Chris Gethin, Sandra Kaufman. Like there's some incredible, and 50 others, like there's 55 in total that are all talking about longevity, right? Discovering, from genetic and functional testing to mindset to, saunas and cold plunge and peptides and supplements and nutrition and everything, bone health and you name it. There's an expert, like a true expert, who's going to dive into that topic. And today on this podcast, we have the person who curated this summit that I'm part of, because I was, again, lucky to be part of this, blessed to be part of the summit. Obviously, my expertise is helping men in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond with their health, with their life, with their longevity, transforming their bodies and their healths and their lives. And so, him connecting with me was amazing. I mean, I'm honored. But Chris Burres, who is a research engineer and scientist, his primary mission is generally now to help people live longer, healthier, and pain-free lives. This guy, while he was in college, he started a company that manufactured this molecule. It's the oldest manufacturer of a molecule called ESS60. You can Google that. And this molecule has been behind the longest longevity experiment result in history. 90% extension of life. So literally taking this molecule or having this molecule in some type of supplement or what have you results in a 90% extension of life, which is insane. And so that discovery, him and his business partner or the guy he was working with, that kind of was the transition from research engineer to entrepreneur, and also someone who really and truly wants to be what he calls a nano-material scientist in the longevity space. And so he published a book. It's called Live Longer and Better. He's been featured on over 125 health-related podcasts. And along with his mission to uncover the secrets of longevity, it's also bringing us this summit. So I wanted to have him on the podcast to talk a little bit about the summit. And again, I actually just signed up for the summit that I'm actually part of, because the speakers in the summit are all incredible. And for you as a man in your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond, learning anything about, genetic, like I talked about the genetic and functional longevity, brain health, blood sugar, all biohacking, with Dave Asprey. I think that was like either Ben Greenfield or Dave Asprey's interview was like 3 hours. Like the knowledge that you're going to come out with on a free virtual summit, I mean, it's a no-brainer. So wherever you're listening to this, hopefully the link below in this video will be posted in the show notes, in the YouTube. You'll get emails from me, but definitely sign up for the summit, because it'll be one of those things that, man, the amount of information you're going to learn is going to be incredible. But I had Chris on so that he can talk about all of the great things that he's learned and things that he can share in the longevity and biohacking space. So get your protein shake ready and sit back and enjoy this episode of the podcast. Welcome to this episode. Guys, there are times when I get blessed and privileged to be part of specific events, right? So for instance, a few months ago, I was approached to be part of Uncovering the Secrets to Longevity, Life Beyond the Norms, which is a virtual online summit. And right off the bat, of course, 100%, it only makes sense. I help men over 40, 50, 60, 70 live longer, better health, better physique, better life. But then when I heard David Asprey and Ben Greenfield and Sarah Kaufman and Dr. Gundry, the list of like powerhouses in the field of longevity, not only was I more privileged to be part of it, but I'm going to actually be part of it. And in fact, I'm going to sign up and listen to all of the great speakers because there's so much rich information that was brought together and curated by today's guest. His name is Chris Burres, and Chris is a research engineer and scientist whose primary mission is to help people live longer, healthier, and pain-free lives. Chris, how are you, my brother? How are you?
I am doing wonderful, Funk. I can't believe that we're already a full month into 2024. We recorded our session, which is going to go live February 26th. We recorded that back last year, like so long ago. And I'm excited. You talked about Dave Asprey, Ben Greenfield, Dr. Gundry, Sandra Kaufman, like all of these powerhouses. And part of me was like, yeah, it's kind of cool to have your name next to them. But let me be very clear. It's extremely cool to have my name next to them. Oh, I was not expect. I describe it this way. If you had asked me 5 months ago, if you say, I like planning, I like having goals. And if you had said, hey, Chris, you're going to do this longevity summit, you're going to interview 55 experts in longevity, including you. And that's going to include Dr. Gundry, Dave Asprey, and Ben Greenfield. I literally would have said, listen, I like to set myself up for success. I don't really like to set myself up for failure. I don't think I can do that. Like, I didn't think I was going to pull this thing together. So this is serendipitous. It's luck. It's hard work. Like, let me not pretend that I didn't work extremely hard and pull as many levers and call as many favors as I possibly could to make this happen. But yeah, I didn't think it was going to happen. Here we are, 55 experts in longevity, including the heavyweights. What amazing information. I've been kind of going on some podcasts trying to promote this, and the questions are there, the new conversations that I'm able to have with people that I had conversations with before. Now I'm, very selfishly able to have better conversations with them because I know so much more. And so it's just been amazing. And I'm so happy to be here and so happy that you were able to participate and all that good stuff.
Hey, do you feel like the Joe Rogan of longevity? Because you had so many, like, you know what I mean? When you have so many experts and are able to interview so many experts and learn from so many experts, I mean, the knowledge base that you have, you had an incredible knowledge base, but now it's like next level. It's like Joe Rogan style, you know what I mean? Like incredible.
Joe Rogan is amazing. I can not deny that I've gone on, and there's actually videos out there, and maybe you even checked them out for your podcast of like how to be a better interviewer. Why is Joe Rogan such a good interviewer? Let's be realistic. Frankly, the dude's smart off the charts, right? Like he's got so much information. The expert across from him may have a lot more information about that particular area, but he brings such a breadth of knowledge to so many things. And then the wit, right? So you can make it entertaining. And then he's certainly very comfortable with confrontation, but gentle confrontation. Like it's not just like in your face, you're wrong and you're stupid. It's like, yeah, I'm not sure this makes sense. Kind of dig into it more. And this is, I think there was one that he was really pushing people on kind of transgender issues, and I think he did an amazing job, right? And he is that. I am not at that level. I certainly aspire to be at that level. one of the things that did come out of this when I started it, I worked with a company called Health Means, and their goal, like I said, was 35 to 40 interviews. Maybe I didn't say that yet. And when I really signed up on this, I was like, you know what? I can probably do 25 and then we'll see what happens. Right. And then ultimately ended up interviewing 55 total. Their target was really like a 30 to 40-minute interview. And I can tell you one thing that I found is I have a hard time doing a 30-minute interview. And maybe you do too, right? I've got so many questions. I tend to do an hour of research at least before I go into the interview. So like when you were on, you're like, hey, these are the things that I'm good at talking about. Here are some questions you might want to ask me. And then I kind of try not to ask those questions, right? Like maybe iterations of them. So I'm doing the research to understand the background. And when it came to, Gundry and Greenfield, I actually did like 3 hours because they just have so much content out there. You want to cull through it and you don't want to ask the same questions. And so I think I was very proud of my interview skills because I've been on this side, right, where I'm the interviewee, but I haven't been the interviewer until this event. And it came out great. I'm really excited.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, and it's also good when you have people who can just like I had Ben Greenfield on my podcast years ago, and literally for the entire 1 hour, I didn't say a word. He was walking in his backyard, and I just let him talk. He's like, all right, I'll take over from here, and the information that he gave was incredible. So yeah, no, I hats off to you and everything that you've done to create this incredible summit. But let's talk a little bit about you first. Like let's step back and just talk about how you got into the longevity industry. Like how did you get into this?
Yeah, so similar to like I wouldn't have told you that I had executed a summit, a longevity summit that would be 6 months ago. Probably 7 years ago, I wouldn't have told you that, had you told me I was going to be in the longevity space and kind of in the direction of a longevity expert, I was like, yeah, that's probably not going to happen, right? Because what am I doing at the time? I'm a carbon nanomaterial scientist. By the way, I like to say I'm a happy-go-lucky carbon nanomaterial scientist, which most like if there is such a thing, that's me. And so let me give you the background for that, right? So I'm holding up a molecule or a model of a molecule, and if you're listening, don't worry. Just imagine a soccer ball where the lines on the soccer ball represent the bonds between the carbon atoms. So you have a spherical molecule of 60 carbon atoms. And that molecule was discovered here in Houston. That's where I'm based at Rice University in 1985. And the three scientists who discovered it actually won the Nobel Prize for that discovery in 1996. So a short 11 years from discovery to being awarded the Nobel Prize. That molecule I started manufacturing with my business partner in 1991. So between the discovery and before the Nobel Prize was awarded, my business partner Robert and I start manufacturing it, and we're selling it to research institutions around the world. It performs as well or better than the current best material in almost every application. So better inks, better tires, better batteries, better photocells. And this is often where people get nervous because they think, well, are we talking about a supplement or are we talking about industrial applications? And it turns out to be both. So it's an very interesting molecule. In fact, the story kind of gets a little worse. They thought the molecule would be toxic, and they put it in a toxicity study. And instead of being toxic, and by the way, my lab provided the material, we're mentioned in the peer-reviewed published research. Instead of being toxic, the test subjects that they gave it to, in this case, it was Wistar rats, lived 90% longer than the control group. Yeah, the single longest longevity experimental result in history, peer-reviewed published research. In fact, the next best way to live longer is calorie restriction, right? If you reduce your calorie consumption by 30%, it's well documented that you can extend your life by 30%. I call that the starve yourself 1/3 to death diet. Nobody seems to sign up for that. They need some new.
No one wants that.
Nobody wants that. You need marketing. And I mean, and kind of based on our conversation, what's the impact on sarcopenia, right? As you're aging and you're not consuming enough, and like this is not the right path.
Right.
But it will extend your life by 30%, if you want to call that life, right? Like that's the debate. And so as that study comes out, we really tried not to get into the supplement industry, right? Because I'm delivering commercial quantities of carbon nanomaterials to research institutions around the world. And that's very different than selling a supplement. That supplement market is kind of, we'll call it a free range space. But ultimately our customers started clamoring for the product and saying, hey, we want this. I call them wacky biohackers. At the time I wasn't one. Now I definitely am one. So I can, it's an affectionate wacky biohackers. And that really pushed us into getting this to market. The testimonials that we were getting were so amazing, and I was very doubtful even about the testimonials as they're coming in. And then ultimately I'm like, hey, we're going to bring this to market. And the thing that I really want to do is share that research with as many people as possible, not just the research on our molecule, but all the research that I was doing on longevity and understanding it. And it's why I ended up writing the book, You Live Longer and Better. And what kind of is the journey of this story that I'm talking about, all these pieces and a lot more are in that book. And then ultimately we bring it to market. Now I'm in the longevity space, this opportunity to kind of throw together a longevity summit. It turns out better than I could have possibly imagined. And then here I am connecting with amazing people like you and sharing stories and learning. Like, one of the things that happens almost with every interview is I get more homework.
Totally. Got to go a little bit deeper down into whatever you just learned to find out more. What molecule is it? What's the molecule?
Yeah, so we call the molecule ESS60. It's 60 carbon atoms in the shape of a sphere. And yeah, it's amazing. Our most consistent testimonial, right, is people take it in the morning, they report mental focus and energy during the day, and better sleep that night. And I've got all sorts of other theories, and maybe we'll jump into a couple of them. But if you just improve sleep, right, you're going to improve your physical, mental, and emotional well-being. And so what is amazing, and I like to draw this distinction. If you look at, there's a book by Dr. Matthew Walker called Why We Sleep. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the parallel tagline. There's a book called Lifespan by David Sinclair, which says why we age and why we don't have to. I kind of wish we had why we sleep and why we don't have to, but it turns out we do have to. Absolutely have to. The book is amazing. I call it the Freddy Krueger of sleep books. If you remember Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy Krueger was a character who would scare people out of their dreams and follow him. That's maybe a bit of a spoiler alert. But that movie's so old. Like, if you haven't watched it, maybe you never.
It's my favorite horror movie.
It's mine too. I will never forget when that hat. Right, like when that hat came through, holy smoke! So now maybe people are going to go watch it. So the Freddy Krueger, in this case, it talks. It's basically 25 years of research from a. I think he's a University of San Diego, certainly U of C right now, and I think he was at Harvard at some point, and a British guy, so an amazing accent for listening to his book. But it's 25 years of research of the detrimental impact of not getting sleep on your physical and mental well-being. Like, this is bad stuff. It will scare you to sleep, not out of sleep. So Freddy Krueger of sleep books. And in that book, he talks about the $2 billion sleep, quote unquote, sleep aid industry, which are prescription drugs that you take right before you go to sleep. And he points out that these are depressants, right? What they do in your body, we have a chemical called adenosine, right? And it's actually from ATP. The A in ATP, the energy source of our cells, is adenosine. And as that adenosine builds up, we desire sleep. And these prescription drugs release the chemical pressure of adenosine. So it must be amazing. You've gone for a month and you wake up and you just desire sleep. And now you've taken this prescription drug, this depressant, you wake up and you don't desire sleep, right? That's got to feel refreshing. But as a depressant, it doesn't allow you to get the REM and NREM sleep that you actually need, the healing and restorative sleep that you actually need. And I draw that comparison because that's something you take right before you go to sleep and is actually not good for you. Ours, you actually take in the morning and report improvements in sleep that night. And I'm only aware of two things that you can do that in the morning. One, you're a big fan, exercise. If you exercise in the morning, that'll positively impact your sleep at night. The other is just getting out into the sun, right? And getting exposure to the sun early in the morning, that'll get your circadian rhythm in line with the rising and falling of the sun. And so those two things are the only things I'm aware of that positively impact, that you do in the morning and positively impact your sleep. So that's our most consistent testimonial.
Yeah, Matthew Walker also said that 100% of the people with mental health issues had sleep deprivation.
Yeah.
So that's like 100%. That's like one of the. May not be the cause, but it's one of those factors that are in there. You know, sleep, lack of sleep, bad sleep patterns, which is again very very telling on the importance of sleep. And he also said something that was really important to me too, was like the REM, right? Like the REM sleep, which is when, you know, your testosterone levels, where your testosterone production happens, when your muscles will recover and you know, grow and get stronger and repair and all of those things. And yeah, you may be getting the surface sleep, but if you're not getting that deep quality sleep, nothing's happening. Right?
Yeah.
Nothing's happening. Or I mean, you know, not what we need, especially as we get older.
You mentioned 100%, and that made me kind of think immediately of something that was dramatic from the Longevity Summit, which was Dr. Gundry. He has got a new book out called Gut Check, and I was able to get an advanced copy of it and able to kind of read it and really kind of query him on the concepts that are different from previous books. And he spoke about in his clinic, so he's still 6 days a week, still seeing patients, and 100% of the patients that he sees have wheat sensitivities, right? So they actually have antibodies in their bloodstream to wheat proteins. Ooh. And so you talked about 100% of people who have mental health issues, like sleep is a factor. Yeah. Wheat is a factor for kind of conditions, autoimmune conditions, all of these things. And that was one of the things that continued to come up, is the importance of your diet, the importance of the gut biome. And it's not a cursory, oh yeah, you need to eat the right things. It's, you need to eat the right things or else, and your own system may not need what your neighbor needs or what your significant other needs, right? Like you might need things that are very different, and you really do need to take the time to understand that.
Man, that's why I'm so excited about this summit, because we're like 20 minutes in, and I'm excited to listen to all of those speakers. And if you're listening to this right now, you definitely want to sign up for the summit. It's the Uncovering the Secrets of Longevity, Live Beyond the Norms. I'll have a link somewhere. There'll probably be a link below this, but just like, you know, definitely sign up. It makes no sense not to. It's free. Yeah. But the information that you're going to gather, like you just talked about autoimmune, because one of my members sent me an email about the fact that he has autoimmune, and you know, all of these factors were coming up, and you said something very important with the wheat, right? And so like, it's just these little things that you learn that can be like, oh, wait a minute, I didn't even think about that. Okay, let me back up, go back to my doctor or what have you, to find out really what could be causing, you know, aside from whatever else was going on in his life. But yeah, that's why this is so amazing. So you mentioned biohacking, and so how do you think biohacking and longevity are kind of like intertwined, or are they the same? Like, are we at the point now where they're the same? Because I know that there's people like, oh, I don't like the term biohacking, and then there's other people who say, yeah, I'm a biohacker, and that's literally what I do. And I'm trying to make myself look at 25 years old, taking 9,000 supplements for the rest of my life. What is the difference? Are they the same? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, certainly biohacking, the guy who created the phrase is Dave Asprey. And I really love, and his interview was fascinating also. And I really love the concept as it was reaching a lot of people think of hacking as a negative thing, right? So first off, it's negative. You're probably pushing too hard, and therefore you're going to pay consequences later, or whatever. That's not what hacking is in general. You're aware that there are hackers who do damage to computers, right? But there's also hackers who just play around, and that is called hacking. If you want to add 16 monitors to your computer system and you only have one video card and you figure out a way, that's hacking, and that's not a negative. It's not, it's just optimizing for whatever situation you want. Maybe you want to overclock your CPU. that's hacking, and doesn't necessarily have a detrimental effect. And his kind of concept, because he actually comes from a computer science background and was building out server farms and working at high level at, I think, probably Fortune 5,000 and up companies. And so he just brought that concept of like, well, how am I going to optimize this? What hacks are available? If I can, I mean, we all use a hack. Well, not all, but almost everyone uses a hack every day. It's called caffeine, right? We almost all, I got my cup of coffee right here. And actually, I don't think I need the caffeine anymore. In fact, I know I don't, because I accidentally took was having some decaf and didn't really notice the difference. but I like the experience, right? I like the smell, I like the taste, and like hey, I've come into the office, I make my kind of cappuccino type thing, and that's all part of the experience in my mornings. Also, it's a great way for me to add our MCT product into my coffee, because I do kind of like a bulletproof coffee kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so hacking is something that we do. Now, you look at longevity. I remember when we really first started kind of going down the path of longevity. Here we've got this, the best longevity supplement in terms of research that's available, peer-reviewed, published research. It's not in humans, right? But a lot of what happens in rats actually happens in humans. I started doing some research on like, what is the search volume for longevity? Are many people even looking for longevity? And it turns out not that many people are searching for longevity. And in fact, that is kind of confirmed when I would tell this, the story of these rats living 90% longer than the control group. And a lot of people, like a surprisingly large amount of people, are like, why would I want to live longer?
Yeah.
And for me, I had always wanted, like, wherever the target came from, whatever age I was when that target came in, I'd always thought I'm going to live to 125, right? Like, that's my goal. If I'm honest, I didn't think 125 was going to look very good, right? Like, it was going to be eking across the line like those, ultra marathoners who just almost die as soon as they get across that ribbon. Maybe not even, maybe resting against the ribbon and not being able to break it. So that's always been my goal. And what I realized is, just like I described, like barely making it across the 125 year finish line, people don't separate living infirmed, right? Living in an infirm state from getting older. Those things are intertwined. And we really are at a quantum shift of medical community's understanding of longevity, medical community's understanding of health span. And we're in this longevity revolution. And so in reality, I think those things are going to come together. Like biohacking and longevity really are becoming entwined. I don't think that there's any biohacker who's not interested in longevity. And I think every person who starts to become interested in longevity understands that they got to do what is called biohacking.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm actually shocked that this longevity search isn't prevalent, but it makes sense, because whenever I used to tell people I want to live till I'm 99, I want to be, but doing burpees at 9, and they're like, why would I want to live? Why would you want to live that long? Like, why would I want to live till I'm 80 or 90? I'm like, are you crazy? And then I start throwing things in like, oh, don't you want to see your grandkids or your granddaughter walking down the aisle, or like you start throwing those things in. It's like, yeah, oh yeah, I'd love to see that. Yeah, well, that's why we want to live that long. We want to live that long. But we want to do it healthy, and it's a reframe, because people think, okay, if I get older, I'm gonna be decrepit. It's like, no, you don't have to be decrepit as you get older. And that's why you're setting yourself up now to be able to continue to live doing burpees. I mean, that's the only thing I can kind of like give them. I want to be doing burpees at 99, right? And beyond. But I just picked that number just as a, something to strive to. And then I think about anti-aging. So I think about anti-aging, longevity, and biohacking. Like, those three are kind of intertwined, because I agree with you. In order to live longer and find ways to live longer, and obviously aside from the general eat healthy, exercise, recovery, mental health, stress, sleep, and then anti-aging, because we want to look great as we age. Like you can age, but you can age gracefully, right?
Mm,
Like people are like, well, why do we want to stop? Some people, why do we want to stop the aging process? We want to age and it's part of life. It's like, yes, but without going overboard, we can age gracefully. So with both of those, you do have to I believe you have to biohack. That's where
yeah.
the biohacking, that's where the bridge comes in. And I'm sure if you look at biohacking searches, that probably tops probably not from anti-aging, but like between biohacking and anti-aging, they're probably very, very close when it comes to search because people like that term biohack, right? Like it's a term that they feel like, okay, I'm going to hack. Like you said, it's going to be a positive thing, not a negative thing. And then anti-aging, I mean, that's mostly women because men don't really think in that sense.
Yeah.
Men think the biohack and women think the anti-aging. And I think both of those can pretty much live together. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think absolutely. Like, what's the point of living longer if we can't do burpees? I remember our interview. One of my questions was like, so how should your exercise routine change as you go from 50 to 60 to 70? And you're like, it shouldn't. I mean, it's a simple answer. It shouldn't. You should be
Yeah,
doing the same things, and you should be
yeah,
pushing to do the same things, and
yeah.
making sure you're recovering, and all of the things necessary to keep doing the same things. What's the point if you can't do burpees? If you don't look good, if you don't feel good about how you look, and there's if you look at the speed at which medical knowledge is changing, right? So this is amazing, and I got into so many rabbit holes. One of them was this, like in 1950, medical information doubled every 50 years. Now, medical information doubles every 73 days.
Jeez, wow.
Yeah. Now,
Think about that.
yeah, that's crazy. So what is that? In a month and a half, less than 3 months, right? Less than a quarter of the year, information will have doubled from today, right? That's amazing. And this is medical information. By the way, that stat doesn't include AI because the AI just came out, right? And ironically, I used AI to do a little calculation to say in 10 years, what's that going to look like? It's hours,
Wow.
right? Information doubling in hours. So what we think we can accomplish with skin today is going to be dramatically different in 3 years, probably. What we think we can do with heart transplants and heart health and liver health and lung health, all of these things are going to be different. Now, one of the consistents from the Longevity Summit is that all of these things, all of the things that you're really concerned about are dependent, and this makes perfect sense at the end of the day, but are dependent on what you're eating,
Hmm.
right? Because like that's the building blocks of whatever. Our muscles are replaced every 3 months. Every single muscle cell is torn apart or ejected and replaced, and this is a stem cell process every 3 months. It's one of the reasons protein intake is so important. When we're younger, right, when our hormones are active and we're growing, our body is really efficient at taking existing muscle cells, breaking them down, and reusing those amino acids, right? We're not so good at that after we get into our 30s. But so this inherently, that fact would mean deterioration, except you can overcome it with protein consumption. So,
Right.
so there are things that you can do now to maximize the positive place that you're in as the medical community is continuing to increase the possibility of reaching that terminal velocity of aging. Right? They say the terminal velocity of aging is the point at which, for every day of life, the medical community extends life by 1.1 day. Right? So what this means is, and I believe this to be true, and I'm maybe a little bit of an outlier here, is that eventually we won't be dying of old age. I mean, still, if you get hit by a bus, if fall out of an airplane, whatever, like they're just nothing you can do about that. But at some point, there will be one person who is the last person to die of old age, and it would suck to be that person. Right? I
No
mean,
doubt.
well, not for them because they're not around to kind of appreciate it, but it would suck to like know that if you could know that you're the last person. And so be doing those healthy things that you can do today to make sure you cross that longevity finish line. That's one of the kind of takeaways from this summit.
But here's the thing, like men are dying younger. Like it seems like men are dying younger every single year. Like it seems like our lifespan is decreasing, and that's due to the behavior. So the fact that the possibility of living longer, right? The possibility of that terminal velocity is like continuously getting better. I guess for other people in other parts of the world, they're actually taking advantage of the terminal velocity and are actually living longer. But here in the Western world, here we're going the opposite direction.
Yeah,
Like, and that's insane. Knowing that, like, hey, here the possibility of of optimizing our life and our health, and the longevity of our health is right here, guys. Like, all we have to do is just do these certain things that aren't really above the spectrum of what we can do. Like, it's not like, oh my God, I got to go over here and do this, and I got to go and do this. You're telling me to do this. Like, it's not really difficult. You know what I mean?
yeah, but it may not be sexy either.
And that's why.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to go climb Mount Everest, right, in order to have the physical fitness you need to get across this longevity finish line, right? And you know that you're training, you're guiding people all the time. Like, you just get up and move. Like if you're not moving, step one, start moving. And if that's 5 minutes a day, that goes to 10, that goes to 20. You got to start that process. You don't have to climb Mount Everest. Like, that's not, you don't have to be a David Goggins and, do 1,000 pull-ups. And I was watching a video of him the other day, and it's his wife following him in a car. And he's like, he woke up this morning and decided he was going to run 100 miles. And okay, why? That gets a lot. I understand the mental fortitude, and there's lessons in that mental fortitude, but we don't have to do that. Right. Like that's not the purpose. I think his purpose is to really continue to show us that we can do more than we think. But I would argue that we should do smarter things, because some of the things that he does are not smart for his physicality. He's having knee replacements pretty young. And so inspiring individual, but don't do that.
Yeah. You don't have to do that. And I think what happens is people try to complicate things. Like, I try to keep everything simple. My consistency in saying the same things over and over again, and people are like, oh well, I ate a lot of fat on this meal, so can I not eat fat on my next meal? And my answer to that is no. You're going to eat fat on your next meal, because every single meal we have a balanced plate. It doesn't matter. So maybe you're going to eat a little bit less, but what's going to happen is that behavior of like, oh, well, I think I ate too much protein here, so I'm not going to eat protein here. I think I ate too much. And then you just starts going down this whole little, hey, don't worry. Like, just because you ate a lot of fat on this one meal isn't going to offset your entire, health. It's actually, your body's probably going to need it and use it the way it needs to. And so it's like always trying to throw in these hurdles, which make, you know what I mean? Like, okay, it's got to be harder than this, but it's not harder. It's very simple when you have when you know that, you know what I mean? Like, when you have that plan. But what are some of the surprises that you took away from the longevity summit? Like, did anybody surprise you with what they told you, or things that you didn't know and you're like, oh geez, I didn't actually know that?
I actually asked every expert, and you'll remember this, how long do you want to live, right? And how long do you think humans can live, right? So I interviewed 55 people. I asked those two questions and a couple of others of each and every one of them. And only 3 had the same number for those two questions, right? How long do you want to live, and how long do you think humans can live? And if you think about that, that kind of doesn't make sense, right? Like, if you think humans can live to 120, why isn't your goal 120? Or if you think they can live to 150, or if it's only 80, whatever, like, shouldn't those be the same? And I think that's a reflection of, again, we talked about being decrepit. Like, if you have this vision of being decrepit, yeah, you can live to 120, but I don't want to. right? You can get to this place, but I don't want to. And so we really have a long way to go. And the people that you and I are talking to kind of at the higher level are already there, right? They're already like, I don't have to be decrepit when I'm at the final age. You look for a good analogy of how you would like to live your life and then ultimately pass if you do. And I think the best example is the candle flame, right? Because that candle just burns nice and bright all the way until the wax is gone, and then it's done. So it's not this protracted 20% of your life. I think that's the number that I just heard in, I think it was Mark Hyman's book, that 20% of your life is spent in digression, right? In a negative, in a declined state. And people don't want that. One of the interviews I did, somebody shared that their uncle was having a conversation. Her uncle likes to drink and smoke, and the doctor was like, listen, this is gonna take like 5-10 years off of your life. And he was like, well, is it the last 5 or 10? Because I really don't want those 5 or 10 years of my life. If I'm going to be in decline for those 5 or 10, like in drinking and smoking gets rid of it. And so people, that was one of the surprising things. Like, hey, this number kind of logically should be the same number, but emotionally it's not for a lot. And a lot of the answers to that question were, hey, as long as I can continue to contribute, right, then I don't care how long it is. Like if that's only until 80, or if that's till 180, like that's kind of Dave Asprey's kind of marketed number, then that's what it is. But I just want to be able to contribute, which I think really goes back to the way I now like to ask the question, which is, if you have the same mental capacity that you have today, and you have the same physical capacity that you have today, would you then be interested in living a lot longer? And the answer is not always yes. That's interesting. Some people, I think, need to kind of reevaluate their life, and there's a lot of joy that could be had. That often comes from giving back and delivering value to others. But a vast majority will shift from I don't want to live longer to yeah, I'd be interested in living longer if I had the same mental and physical capacity that I have today. So that was one. And then one, I was kind of looking for the ultimate answer. Like, is there something that we see as I'm having conversations with these experts that is insurmountable? That is like, okay, 120 is the date, and it's because apparently there's some genetic switch and we die at 120. Like I was looking for this switch that we can't do anything about it. And I did come up with something pretty close. I had 2 conversations with stem cell experts. One does kind of exogenous stem cells, where they're, either doing placental stem cells or they're pulling stem cells out of you and re-injecting them. And then the other one is a Christian Drapeau. I actually have his book. His company is Stem Regen. And what his product does is cause your body to release more of the stem cells that are in your system. And those stem cells come from your red marrow in your bone marrows, right? So red marrow. And one of the things kind of in researching it and having a conversation with him, and really I spent some time doing follow-up research, that red marrow shrinks as we age. And even Jean Clement, if I'm saying her name right, she's the oldest documented lived human. So she lived to 122, I think. They traced all of the cells in her body to one stem cell line, right? So that's like one remaining red marrow section was providing all the stem cells to her. And stem cells are the things that replace all your existing cells. Like, we know our skin cells are replenished. Like, we know that from a very young age. I just mentioned your muscle cells. Every 3 months, they're all replenished. That comes from stem cells. Those stem cells are released out of your red marrow, and they go in and take the place of, older cells that have kind of experienced apoptosis, like the destruction and utilization of those cells. But if you can imagine, if you run out of stem cells, like, then you're done for. Like that's it. Now, there are solutions already, actually, because you can get stem cells exogenously, right? You can take stem cell injections, and there's treatments that you can do here in the States of certain types, and then overseas for other types. And so it may be a situation where, again, not insurmountable, because there are potential solutions, where you could, maybe it's like a dialysis situation, right? If your kidneys go bad, you're going regular, I think it's daily, to do dialysis treatments where it's filtering your blood, filtering out all the toxins in your blood. Maybe you might need to be going daily, or you've got some sort of, you just plug in at night and it injects you with stem cells, because that's probably when you're doing most of your repair anyway while you're sleeping. And so that was a little surprise. I was kind of looking for it, so I wasn't surprised, but it was interesting to find it.
Yeah, for sure. So out of all the interviews that you did, all the information that you gathered, what was the biggest limiting factor for living longer that came out of the summit? Like what was the one thing you kept hearing over and over again that's the limiting factor?
So I think, well, the limiting factor is just that the red marrow shrinks as we age. So I think that's the limiting factor. And I didn't hear it from many places. Actually, I don't even think, I actually followed up with Christian and asked some questions, and he kind of confirmed, yeah, like if your bone marrow, if your red marrow like disappears because it keeps shrinking every year, then that's not a good situation. That's not a situation that's going to sustain you longer. I think overall, the thing that kept coming up that was a little surprising to me, and almost like you're going into the longevity summit. One, I was looking for this kind of, what is the weakness, and two, like, what's the magic potion? Is the magic potion hyperbaric chambers, or is it saunas, or is it just some particular vitamin or supplement or whatever? And quite boringly, the thing that just kept coming up time and time again was your diet and food sensitivities. So not necessarily allergies, right? Because you can go to your allergen, your doctor, your allergy doctor, and they can, prick you with all sorts of, different things. You can figure out that you're allergic to eggs or weed or whatever. But they're actually talking about sensitivities. And these are sensitivities with Gundry. He mentioned leaky gut 102 times in his new book, right? Leaky gut equals leaky brain. Leaky gut equals leaky bones. Leaky gut equals leaky heart. Leaky gut. And literally, I was kind of reciting that as an interview question. It's like, all right, Gundry, we get it. Like, leaky gut is a problem. And that's why I kind of came up with the 100% have antibodies to wheat, right? To different wheat lectins. And he can see those resolve. And he said even some who have purportedly gotten wheat out of their diet had antibodies. So they had to just get so aggressive and so particular with that in order to solve this leaky gut. So the fundamental premise of leaky gut is you've got one layer in your stomach and through your intestines that keeps food. So a lot of people don't think of it this way. If you take a pool noodle, right, that has a hole down the middle, if you dropped a marble down the middle of this pool noodle, would you say that the marble has become part of the noodle? Well, no, it's just kind of flowed right through the noodle. Well, that's how we are. Like from our mouth to our anus, it's just a hole, and that's food that isn't getting into our system until and the lining that prevents that from happening is our gut wall, right? And that's a 1 cell thick. And as soon as you start getting gut permeability or leaky gut, then things that aren't supposed to get into your bloodstream start getting into your bloodstream. And those are, plants have designed lectins so that they look like components of our body. So our own system starts attacking our own body. These are the root cause of autoimmune disease. So you've got to fix that first. That's the thing that you have to fix. And that came up over and over and over again, almost universally. And with anybody, any expert that I was talking, I could ask, how important is the gut biome as it relates to, I don't know, stem cells or whatever? And the answer was always very important.
Yeah, for everything. I mean, I've learned that through also having people on the podcast who are gut experts, and just throughout the years, it's just that's the key. The gut microbiome. That's what you need to keep. Even like, it's so funny because when my son was younger, we used to watch a movie. Probably watched it 1 million times with Chris Rock, and it was called what? what was it called? It was a cartoon about the gut. Oh my God, it was a cartoon anyway, but it was so educational. To tell you the truth, it was crazy. I can't remember what it was called, but it's a good one. It's a real good one. So you wrote a book, and kind of like, what is the premise of that book?
So it really is, as much as kind of our conversation today has been a lot about how I ended up putting together a longevity summit and what that was like. And there's lots of new, like there's almost a story behind each of the 55 interviews. There's certainly the story of me preparing for it, right? And going down the relevant rabbit hole for the individuals. The book is about how did I end up gonna becoming an engineer? Why did I become not an engineer but an entrepreneur? Which ultimately, actually, I studied engineering because of my path towards entrepreneurship. So we dive into that, then we dive into, okay, I'm still in college. I know I want to be an entrepreneur, and I actually end up starting a company before I even get out of college, right? So this is 33 years ago. I'm starting a business. My business partner and I are attending the University of Houston. And here are like 19-year-old kids who are actually carbon nanomaterial manufacturers. So we built this equipment in order to make this kind of crazy soccer ball shaped molecule. You actually have to vaporize graphite. Graphite is one of the hardest materials on the planet to vaporize. In fact, you actually need local temperatures of the sun to vaporize it. So you'll take two graphite rods, and between those, you've got a plasma. That plasma has to be the temperature of the sun in order to vaporize graphite. So, and it also has to be in a chamber at a slight vacuum with no oxygen, right? So you got all these things you're taking, like, not easy, also not easy, and then not easy when you combine them together. And then, oh, let's add one more thing that's also not easy and is harder when you combine them all together. So we start manufacturing. By the way, that is the best manufacturing equipment until today, right? So we've traveled the world, visited different manufacturers of this molecule, and the ones that are doing it right actually are still using our process
Wow.
that we created back in 1991, really 1990. So it talks about that. It talks about the Nobel Prize, being at different conferences where different scientific fractions were arguing with each other, like vehemently arguing with each other in a science, in a symposium, um, which was a little counter to my very naive thoughts about science at the time, but is actually what's exactly supposed to happen. You're supposed to argue
Yes.
about these scientific facts. And then you roll into, okay, great, we're happy-go-lucky carbon nanomaterial scientists. Then somebody starts talking about the benefits they're receiving by taking the product on a daily basis. This is a biohacker, cutting-edge biohacker, a wacky guy, right?
Hmm.
And then our phone starts ringing 10 times a day instead of 2 times a week about the potential supplement. And then we ultimately get into the industry. And then now, in the book, I share some of kind of Dave Asprey's. I'm digging into this longevity thing. So I'm reading Lifespan. I'm reading Dave Asprey's book. I'm reading Dr. Gundry's book. There's a book called Life Force that's fairly
Yeah.
recent. Yeah, with Tony Robbins and Peter Diamandis.
There it is.
Massive book, amazing book, right? Like it's
Great book.
just chock full
Great
of
book.
stuff.
I know.
And so I'm talking about things that I've learned in those books,
Mm.
and so really kind of a consolidated live longer and better, right?
Awesome.
And the
That's yeah.
tagline is, your journey to living longer and better has never been more achievable than today.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And that's the hope that we want. Okay. Before we go, two last things. Number one, tell us about this summit.
Yeah.
Dive in. Pitch this summit to anyone who's listening and why they need to be signing up for this free summit.
So 55 experts in longevity, right? And we've mentioned Gundry, Asprey, Greenfield. You mentioned Sandra Kaufman. She actually has one of the most comprehensive theories about aging and solutions to aging, and the most analytical approach. So I really like her Kaufman protocol. Really, really pretty amazing. I would joyfully interview her once a week. Like probably in perpetuity, because
Yeah.
she's just so sharp. Sergey Young. is actually mentioned in that book that you just showed, that book, Life Force. He hangs out with Elon Musk, Tony Robbins, and Peter Diamandis. He is the first investor in, so X Prize is an amazing motivational not-for-profit, and they just came out with their most valuable X Prize, which is $101 million to the first group that demonstrates a 10-year extension of life with a target of 20. And Sergey Young was the first to invest in that. So he invested the initial capital to do the research and put this whole thing together. He wrote a book, The Science and Technology of Growing Young. So I got to interview him. He was an amazing interview. So many amazing people really kind of dug deep into hyperbaric chambers. We dig deep into sauna, cold plunge, like what are the actual targets that you want? Like how cold for how long, how hot in a sauna, how hot for how long? You know, you're supposed to sweat a pound of sweat. Like that's a goal. You're supposed to increase your internal temperature by 1 degree. And you actually should get out of it and feel exhausted, right? And I actually did, you know, I've got my watch that keeps track of my heart rate. I actually did like a 30-minute dumbbell routine. So just some YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And my heart rate was higher in the sauna and higher for longer than it was during that routine. Now, maybe I wasn't pushing myself that hard, but anyway, you should be exhausted coming out of all of these things about how to optimize what you're doing for longevity so that you can get across that longevity finish line covered in this book. And it's free, right? So you're going to have a link. You just need to give your name and your email, and then you can actually sign up. And I actually, on the back end, you're able to sign up. There's an additional fee, but you're able to sign up for a 3 event. I'm doing 3 events where I'll kind of highlight research, that things that I wanted to focus on that should be focused on, and then it'll be a Q&A. So people who actually sign up for that post event can be on a live Q&A with me. And so I think that's exciting. And since we're talking about this type of thing, I do want to share the book, Live Longer and Better. And there is a website for that, livelongerandbetterbook.com. There's a charity aspect that I really am very proud of. The book is like $20, so you can just buy the book. For $10 more, you get a signed copy of the book. 100% of that $10, so that full $10 goes to OR, which is Operation Underground Railroad. They just had a movie out recently called The Sound of Freedom, and this is about child sex trafficking and stopping child sex trafficking. So that additional $10 goes directly to OR, and I'm very proud of that kind of charity aspect.
That's amazing, man. Yeah, I saw The Sound of Freedom, and yes, it's insane what's going on.
Yeah,
people don't even know.
Yeah,
like, people don't.
Well, you kind of.
I've been in the dark arts many years ago, and you know, not in that sense, but when you're around those type of people, right, and you're around that you know, like you see some dark stuff, man, and it's just like, and regular people don't understand, like, and it's worse than it's ever been. It's worse than it's ever been.
Yeah.
Because it's like, that's the scary part. It's worse than it's ever been. We got phones, and we've got all this technology. And back when I was dark, there were no cell phones, thank God. There wasn't the way cameras. Sorry, there weren't cameras on cell phones. So it's crazy. It's crazy.
It's something that people don't want to know about. Right? Because it's just so horrific. And so it's not just that they don't want to know about it. And the last thing is I'll be making a link for your audience. So if they go to myvitalc.com/funk, then they'll be able to kind of connect with a page. There is a coupon code also, which is FUNK, and that'll give them $15 off of initial order. If anybody wants to try the product, great. I just want to make that available to your audience.
That's incredible. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. That's amazing. My guys love that. My guys absolutely love that. And I'm going to try the product too. So that'll be great.
I'll get some sent out to you. I'm happy to do
That'd
it.
Be awesome.
I've in the past, I've kind of sent I think this is pretty funny. So I've sent product, and then you have some time to try it. and then like maybe 30 days we get back together again, and you can say what it's like over 30 days to double your life.
Yeah. I like it. And my last question, you've been asking a lot of people this question, so I'm going to ask you this question. How long do you want to live, and how long do you believe humans can live?
How long I want to live has probably has like two caveats. So my goal's been 125 for a long time. So we'll start at 125. I think that's rapidly going to change as the technologies, that the medical technologies go to improve our resilience as we get older. So I think that's going to change. How long can we live? I ultimately think with today's technology, it's probably about 120. So I'm kind of interesting, right? I'm going to live 5 years younger than how long we can live. But with medical information doubling as quickly as it is, right? Even right now, that's going to change. And then you imagine, like, throw AI and throw in that, there's more people working on more of these who have better ways to integrate and communicate. And we didn't have the ability to understand the genome, right? We couldn't map out the genome. You think back to the pandemic, within hours of kind of identifying this was going to be a problem, the gene map and what you needed in order to create a vaccine was already on the other side of the world. Like this is not where we were, 20 years ago. And now it's already here. Like, this is amazing. So I think ultimately it's forever. Right now it's 120.
Okay, love it. Forever. Yeah, that would be great. Chris, thank you so much. First, thank you so much for allowing me and giving me the opportunity to be part of the summit, the Uncovering the Secrets of Longevity, Live Beyond the Norm Summit. So I appreciate you for that. I appreciate you for being on this, on my podcast. And of course, I'm going to be doing something hopefully in the future. So I'm definitely going to be coming back to you as well.
Cool.
To get more information. So
very cool.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for being
All right. Thank you so much for having me, Funk.